And we condemn this horrific attack as a terrorist attack, motivated and carried out by white supremacists. Ask our political leaders to address the growing menace of Islamophobia and hate that has been perpetrated by political leaders, by ideologues, by people who want to run for public office, by people who won public office on the backs of immigrants, blacks, Jews, Muslims, and all minorities. We hold them accountable. The perpetrator of this terrorist attack has been inspired by hate mongers in the United States. The perpetrator of this horrific and terrorist attack today referenced President Trump in his manifesto. In this manifesto, years ago, when another terrorist attacked people in Norway, he quoted Islamophobes like Spencer and Pamela Geller. Today, the terrorist has quoted the most powerful person in the world, President Trump. During your presidency and during your election campaign, Islamophobia took a sharp rise, and attacks on innocent Muslims, innocent immigrants, and mosques have skyrocketed. We hold you responsible. And we are also united against the Trojan ideology that sees immigrants as invaders. We should not tolerate this hate speech, because hate speech leads to violence. Now we are looking at the results of hate speech and propaganda against the Muslim minority.
As you know, CAIR has been monitoring and reporting on hate crimes, bias incidents, and discrimination incidents for quite some time. Our offices around the country get reports on a regular basis of harassments as innocuous or as sort of day-to-day banal things like people getting harassed in grocery stores and streets or getting chased down on highways, to as terrible as murders exist in the manifestos of other mass murderers around the world. They are directly related to ideas that are carried out in certain quarters in our own society, that exist in radio shows, that exist in TV shows, that have dog whistles by mainstream politicians, by mainstream news commentators. And we, as a community, have to take control and leadership back in our public space. We have to ask our TV networks to be responsible. We have to ask our social media platforms to be responsible. We have to ask our charities and philanthropic communities to be responsible and not allow these people to guide, to exploit freedom of speech.
What happened in New Zealand is unfortunately becoming all too common of an occurrence. We can make no mistake, the evil behind these attacks is too often rooted in white supremacy. With all the talk of immigrants invading our country, threatening our way of life, the need to build a wall, it's actually the opposite. We now have a segment of our country that is eroding the ideals of what it means to be American. Together, we will all continue to work together to eradicate Islamophobia and other forms of hatred that weaken us as a nation and as a world community. Thank you.
This attack follows a line of similar white supremacist attacks on places of worship, churches, synagogues, mosques, and temples. Last night, my mayor's office texted me to ask what more can be done to fight bigotry, anti-Muslim bigotry, and hate in our communities. I invite all elected officials, and particularly those in local government, to reflect deeply on this question. We ask local government officials to oppose hate speech and hate violence in every form, and to be better at tracking and reporting on hate crimes.
In the wake of this terrible attack, we call on elected officials to commit themselves to opposing hate speech and violence in every form.
I've been in these offices before where we've done these press conferences. It's not just calling on our public officials to condemn what's happening. It's calling on them to change policies as well. When I see the policies that don't allow people from Muslim communities to come to the United States, that it gives rise to greater Islamophobia. When I see the policies that keep people from entering our country when they're fleeing violence at our border, that is part of the policies that give rise to hatred. When I see policies that are condemning, when I see people who are condemning the two new beautiful Muslim congresswomen that we have representing us, that is also very painful and gives rise to acts of hatred and violence.
We recommit ourselves to dismantling Islamophobia, anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant hatred, and all forms of dehumanization, racism, and white supremacy that fuel violence like what we saw today at the Al-Noor Mosque and the Linwood Islamic Center in Christchurch. We call on everyone, especially our elected officials and political leaders, to take a stand, not just with their thoughts and words, not just with their condolences, but with their actions against the rising anti-Muslim and Islamophobia that we see here in this country, actions to confront this hatred that is spreading all over this country and now sadly all over this world. We have had enough of thoughts and prayers. It is time for action. Thank you.
And we should be clear that the hate expressed through the horrific violence in New Zealand is not generic. It's about anti-Muslim hate, which among other manifestations of white supremacy has become all too common in our times.
It is no secret that Mr. Trump has campaigned on white supremacist ideology, on division and fear. He campaigned against immigrants, against Mexicans, against African Americans, against women, against Muslims. Muslims have received the lion's share of his attacks, that he was able to normalize Islamophobia and to give legitimacy to those who fear Muslims and fear immigrants. I mean, many white supremacist attacks on the American Muslim community, the attackers cite Trump.
To be backed up by action, and one of the easiest ways for Congress to get behind this is to increase the capacity for state, local municipalities to report on hate crimes and to mandate that kind of reporting. The Congress can get behind by passing measures to force states and local municipalities to report better and consistently on hate crimes and bias incidents.
Tell them, read this guy's manifesto. It reads like it was written in America, and it's clearly inspired by the kind of hate rhetoric and growing bigotry that we're seeing in America, referencing Donald Trump, referencing the, quote, invasion of immigrants. All of these themes that we hear on a daily basis are referenced in this manifesto.
We have been witnessing an unprecedented number of attacks on mosques. We have not seen violence against mosques, but we fear that it might be coming.
We know what racism looks like. We know what anti-Semitism looks like. When you hear the word invading immigrants, which we've heard in this administration, and we've seen people send, stunt shows and circus shows of sending the military down to the border to do what? Nothing, except send the message that immigrants are the enemy. All right? Whether it's right now with a global network of white supremacist ethno-nationalists of European background trying to push back some kind of globalizing tide of integration and harmony. These are fascists. We have to recognize it.
Absolutely disappointed with our president, and we understand that our president's rhetoric and his model and example are part of the problem, and that he, in fact, is helping white supremacists around the world perpetrate heinous crimes. And so,
all right. Again, thank you for coming, and everybody's available for one-on-one interviews. Thank you.